What's going on, guys? Josh Pontius here with Elah Armament, and I wanted to check in today and do a video review on the song Richmond, North of Richmond by Oliver Anthony. And at this point, I honestly haven't listened to any other reviews. I'm sure there's a ton out there. But as soon as I made up my mind that I wanted to review this song, I really wanted to stay away from what other people thought. I just really wanted my reaction and my review to just be as raw and authentic as I could. So we'll just jump right into it. I do apologize, my laptop is open. I have a couple stats on some things that I want to read, so I'll try not to bore you too much with the reading. And I was contemplating playing the song and just kind of working through it line by line, but just for the sake of time, I will post the link in the description for the song. If you haven't heard it yet, I highly recommend you go check it out. So first, I guess the title, the song, the author is by Oliver Anthony. From what I know, very little about him. I guess this was actually the first song he ever recorded, and it ended up just absolutely going viral. The title of the song, I don't know if everybody kind of picked up on this. It took me a little while actually, but Richmond, North of Richmond, is in reference to the state of Virginia. And obviously Washington, D.C. being in Virginia, and it is actually north of Richmond, Virginia. So when it says Richmond, north of Richmond, it's actually referring to Washington, D.C. and is kind of connected to politics and just the active politicians for our country. The song really caught me at first line. In these first lines of the lyrics, it says, "I've been selling my soul, working all day, overtime hours for bullcrap pay. So I can sit out here and waste my life away, drag back home and drown my troubles away." And I just think personally that this exact principle has really been on my heart as a man. I work a normal 9 to 5. I work a day job to pay bills and provide for my family. I have 3 kids with 1 on the way, and my wife is a stay-at-home mom. We made that choice a while ago that we just really wanted her to steward our kids and to raise them and to really pour into them as much as we can. And we just felt like it was important to have a strong presence for her to steward them. So obviously then the financial burden falls on me as the provider from my family. So work really is just an integral part of my life. And just as a husband and as a father, I have this responsibility that I have to work. So because of that, it drives long hours, it drives long days, and I try to find a balance, but I always feel this struggle in my heart of how much is too much, and if I'm too busy working, it's my obligation to financially provide for my children, but it's also my spiritual, my emotional, and my physical obligation to provide more than that for my children. So if I'm not at home at the dinner table and I'm not there to really unpack some of the failures of their life, I feel like I fall short. So I don't know that there's this very small white and this very small black and then this huge area in between that's really the big gray area. And this cry really just comes out of my heart. It has many times before. I've thought like, man, what am I doing here? Why am I working so much? I'm giving these companies 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, just to get home. My kids are already kind of unwinding for the day. Maybe I hit the door at 5:30. They start getting ready for bed at 7:30. I really get 2 hours a day with my kids. And like, what am I doing? It kind of feels like that. Like you've sold your soul just to be able to go in and report to somebody else's company, to pour into their company and build them up. And just for some bullcrap pay. So man, when I really heard those lyrics for the first time, that really resonated with me. And I think where he says, so I can sit out here and waste my life away, drag back home to drown my troubles away. I like I said, know very little about Oliver Anthony, but I do believe he struggled with alcoholism. And I believe that that's what that line means, is that he now has found this void in his heart that is so deep that he really struggles so much with going to work and pouring himself out so much for no reason, just to be taxed and to have his dollar smashed by every dollar you earn, every dollar you spend being taxed away. That now this void and this depression has really come out of him, that he's now turned to alcohol to kind of deal with that. One thing that really was powerful for me is if we work 8 hours a day and we sleep 8 hours a day, you essentially only have 33% of your time to live 100% of your life outside of sleep and work. So again, I've wrestled with that as a man, I've wrestled with that as a husband, and that really has been something that spoke to me in the song. So the next line, it says, it's a dang shame what this world's gotten to for people like me and people like you. One of the main pieces here is that I really feel like he's connecting and relating to just the working population. I think it's more obviously the blue collar, the work boots, and being out in the workforce. But I think he's really identifying that of like, listen, it's people like me and it's people like you. It's not the 1% of the 1% that he's talking about. Next line, I wish I could wake up and it not be true. Man, to me that reeked with so much desperation and just a soul cry for like, if there's anything I could do to get out of this, like a Freddy Krueger nightmare of man, if I could wake up and it not be true, I'd do anything for that. And I think a lot of us have kind of found ourselves in similar positions before where, man, that emotion is just so strong, and that depression, a lot of people call them like the Sunday sadness, where coming into the end of Sunday, you're already so overwhelmed by the work week that you have coming that you just kind of get overwhelmed. So next line, living in a new world with an old soul. I don't know kind of where he's at and what he believes. There's tons of rabbit trails with like conspiracy theories, so to speak. So I don't know if he's really speaking when he says a new world, if he really means like a new world order type thing, which I think it could be possible based on kind of the context of the song. But man, for me, even if that's not the direction of what he meant, I think even in my generation, we're really in a new world. I was born in 88, so I'm 35. Man, and looking back to when we were kids, like, we didn't have cell phones. You weren't connected. It was call the landline. If I'm not home, you're not going to get me. My parents will take a message. I'll call you back. Right after school, you're going to play with friends. You're staying out till the streetlights come on. You're drinking from the garden hose, and just kind of even fast forwarding from, I don't know, maybe middle school until where we're at now, it literally feels like it's a new world, and things have just changed so radically and so much and so fast to a world now that's so fast paced. You're so connected, and when he says with an old soul, I think maybe he just feels like he's old school in this. And again, I would say for my generation, I would maybe consider myself old school. I was raised with some very old school principles, and I've even kind of felt like at times like, man, I wonder if I was kind of born like a generation late, and you almost feel like you are just an old soul stuck in a new world, and it just doesn't fit. It doesn't feel right. Next lines, it says, these rich men north of Richmond, Lord knows they all just want to have total control, want to know what you think, want to know what you do, and they don't think you know, but I know that you do. Again, could be kind of a reference there to New World Order, but I think either way, it really touches on the point of just this constant tracking, right? Having our cell phones, we're at the constant disposal of being tracked down. When you download an app, it says, ask the app not to track you. It doesn't say, hey, it's not gonna, it's just ask it not to. I think, even people have said at times before, like, you have a conversation, you talk about something, then you jump on social media and you see an ad. So again, not going to get into like any conspiracy theories or anything, but I personally have experienced stuff like that. And it reminded me of a Winter Soldier clip from Captain America Winter Soldier. I don't want to rant on it too much, but in the movie, there's a scene where Captain America takes one of the bad guys or one of the villains up on the top of the roof. And essentially there's these planes that are all kind of being synced together to wipe out targets and to wipe out threats. And Cap asks him, tell me about, it's called Vola's algorithm. Tell me about Vola's algorithm. And he says it's going to be an algorithm that's used to identify and eliminate threats. And Cap is confused. He's like, what do you mean? Like, how is it going to identify them? And how is it going to know who's a threat or who's not? And he kind of laughs like it's comical. And he says, how is it not? It tracks your voting patterns. It tracks your SAT scores. It tracks your purchases and your credit card purchases and your Google searches. And again, I don't base my reality off of off of Hollywood's theology, but it was just kind of odd where like literally that feels very similar to like the world that we live in today, where you have no privacy in anything. Everything's tracked. As soon as you put it out on the internet, it's stuck there forever. And that type of feel is kind of what I feel coming out of these lyrics, that there's just no privacy, and in a world where you just absolutely can't get away from it, they want to know what you think, they want to know what you do at all times, and it really just feels super invasive. Next line, it says, "'Cause your dollar ain't crap, and it's taxed to no end 'cause of Richmond, north of Richmond." I had posted this Instagram post about a year ago, and I want to read it to you guys. In regards to taxes, it says, from King George III, which was pre-revolution, there was a tax on tea, there was a tax on paper, a tax on sugar, and a tax on certain imports. That total tax was roughly estimated to be about 1 to 2.5%. The constitutional republic from today, there's income tax, sales tax, employment tax, property tax, inheritance tax, import tax, export tax, tax on gas, tax on cigarettes, tax on alcohol, and other taxes. It's roughly estimated the average American is taxed anywhere from 30 to 40%. And this was the content of the post. It says, "I seen a shirt yesterday that had a picture of George Washington, and it had a quote that said, 'Me and my homies would have been stacking bodies by now.' And it made me stop and think, what's the comparison of taxation from the rebellion until now? Well, there it is. And anyone that says it's more about representation than taxation, don't forget that there is now overwhelming evidence that the people did not select their national leader in the last election. Your president is not elected, he was assigned. As astronomical as the differences between taxation from then until now, the accurate representation is even worse." And man, that post, I think really highlights just exactly what he's saying here, is that your dollar has been taxed to no end, to the point now where every dollar that you make is taxed, and then every dollar you turn around and spend is also taxed. We are now taxed on both sides. And the shirt of George Washington was kind of comical, of like, man, me and my homies would have been stacking bodies. But man, people in the past have really pushed back against much worse than what we tolerate today. So I think the working individual, to have your money pulled so much, to really live on such a small sliver of what you actually go out and earn, is part of really what keeps the working American enslaved. So and that really resonated with me, that really stood out. I think that's really the point that he's trying to drive home. Next line, I absolutely love this. It says, "I wish politicians would look out for miners," which it's actually miners, meaning obviously like coal miners, and not just miners on an island somewhere, minors. And I don't know how much everybody knows. Obviously, Biden has really made a lot of he's made a lot of moves in regards to the coal plants. This is an article back from November 4th of 2022. It says, "Biden says coal plants all across America will be shut down and replaced by wind and solar. He argues that it's cheaper to generate electricity from wind and solar than it is from coal. Biden said Friday that the coal plants are too expensive to operate, and we're going to be shutting these plants down all across America." And unfortunately, that was a promise that he did keep. Another article, this one was released January 26th of this year. It says, "Biden admins issue a 20-year mining ban, as it turns out that the foreign supply chain amid there's a green energy push." I'm not going to read the article to you. Essentially, a 20-year withdrawal from over 200,000 acres in North Minnesota, that was the home of the largest domestic critical mineral reserve. A couple key stats. It says an electric vehicle requires roughly 500% more mineral resources than the traditional gas-powered car, while a single onshore wind turbine plant requires 800% more minerals than the typical fossil fuel plant. And that's according to the International Energy Agency. So that's not like an Elah Armament quote, like that's legit coming from some legit resources. And when you see stuff like that, and it's tied to a green push where things should be more green, but it is actually less green, I think we really got to start asking some questions. So I think that's just across history, but even more so just in the current administration. I think that's what he's saying, is like, man, I just wish that there was more of a concern for these miners, not only their jobs, but just I think the way that impacts America as a whole. and not just some miners on an island somewhere, obviously Epstein Island, and again, a whole nother rabbit hole that we won't go down today, but I truly believe it, man, and I think that there's a lot of stuff that goes on that is passed by as long as you make enough, know enough, or know the right people. So next line, Lord, we got folks in the streets, they ain't got nothing to eat, and the obese milk and welfare. I'm going to end with this one, and then I think it's the last verse here. And I really wanted to jump into some stats here and just slow down for a sec, just because some of the people that I talked to were kind of questioning, like, did he cross the line here? And obviously, it's just a sensitive subject, but I really kind of want to unpack why I don't think a line was crossed and what I really think the heart of what he was saying is. So, according to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, counts of homeless individuals reached record highs in the history data collected from 2022. I'm not going to get into the article or any more of the stats. If you want to check it out, it is endhomelessness.org. And it really kind of unpacks a lot of those statistics, but I think just exactly what he's saying is, like, man, homelessness has just absolutely become a plague in the country. And obviously welfare at this point is a strong point that he's mentioning, that these essentially are two of the main plagues, maybe not main, but two really big plagues that kind of just infiltrate America and really have a negative impact. And meanwhile, we're sending hundreds of billions over to foreign countries. Again, foreign funding is not something we're going to get into today, but I know everybody has a strong opinion on it one way or another, but to send out so much money when we have such a problem that's infiltrated our own country, again, really just doesn't make sense. Current administration claims that there's lower homeless rates. They are actually statistically at a record high. And I also believe that the touch on welfare really was a cry to try to get people to stop taking advantage of the system. There is no such thing as a free lunch is one of the notes I got in here. And I believe that with all my heart, that if there is a free lunch for somebody got to pay for that. So last line or the last verse here that is absolutely directly connected. It says, well, God, if you're 5'3" and 300 pounds, taxes ought not to pay for your bag of fudge rounds. Again, the 300 pounds really isn't the sticking point. The 5'3", I don't know that he's really highlighting any type of demographic that he's really trying to put on blast. I think the piece that he's really highlighting is taxes should not pay for people's fudge rounds. Young men are putting themselves 6 feet in the ground, literally burying themselves, killing themselves just to try to get by. And yet there's some that are still pulling from a pool that they have not contributed to. Because all this dang country does is keep kicking them down. And I think what he's saying is, again, the taxation, as much as the dollar is already tapped, as much as inflation has gone up, and then to have more people pulling from that, there's people that are killing themselves. You're working all these overtime hours just to kind of barely get by. You live paycheck to paycheck. And talking a little about welfare, it's actually Aids to Families with Dependent Children. It's the acronym AFDC. It's AKA welfare. And I think just as a whole, Americans really start to get a little bit uncomfortable when handouts are given to able-bodied adults. So one of the things here that I think the program was designed to do is to be there for dependent children. And I think since its launch, it's really lost the scope of what it was designed for. There's a big article, it was actually written in November of 21, which is statistically pretty outdated, and it pulls data from 1991. I'm going to talk about some of the stats here, just kind of rapid fire to wrap this thing up. I didn't take the time to kind of compare the 91 stats to the 21 and then the 21 to the 23, but you can imagine from 1991 until now how much these stats are grossly underestimated. So it says in 1991, the average monthly AFDC caseload was 4,628,000 families, or 13,712,000 individuals. That's 5.5% of the population, and the average family size was 2.96. The period from 1988 to 1991 alone, it saw the largest increase in recipients in the history of the AFDC, and the rolls grew by nearly 2 million. Total spending on the AFDC in 1991 was $20.3 billion in direct handouts and $2.5 billion in administrative costs. Every year, about 90 million Americans pay federal income taxes. So now we're shifting to the working American. So that means that for every 6 or 7 taxpayers, so working individuals that are paying taxes into the pool, you support a welfare recipient as well as themselves and their families. And this, again, is from 1991. Like, we can argue with COVID and where we're at in the current administration, where we're at with unemployment rates. We're not going to get into all that, but just taking these stats alone, with about 90 million Americans paying into federal income tax, about every 6 or 7 taxpayers are supporting somebody as well as their family. At any given time, 65% of all recipients of the program have been getting welfare for more than 8 years. So it's not like a boom, you're in a struggle, you're kind of getting on, we're helping you get back on your feet, and then you're transitioning out. People are coming in, getting comfortable, and I would even say getting stuck. And when they get stuck in that, then it becomes a long-term support, and then obviously that long-term pulls from the pot. And I think that's kind of the heart cry of what he's pouring out here is like, man, I'm killing myself. These young men are burying themselves. And again, men, women, workforce, I think is really what he's saying. So how did we get here? And final point, I'll wrap up with this. In 1935, federal legislation established the program, and it did not offer benefits to unwidowed mothers. It specified that assistance was to be for widowed, separated, or divorced mothers in cases where relatives liable under the law for are to support until they are not able to provide adequate care. Unmarried mothers were not thought to be fit beneficiaries, and married mothers were only eligible after the resources of relatives had been exhausted. So the program at its core in the 1930s was meant for like, hey, your spouse just died and you have children, let's help you out, let's put you in a position where we can help you, and if you didn't meet that criteria, you weren't eligible for the program. So I didn't look into where that transition happened, when did we get away from that, and since then, when is it kind of taken that shift? But I can say, looking at today where we're at as a whole as a country, we are grossly off the target from where the original intention was meant to be. Again, at this point, 65% of people are stuck for 8 years, and 6 to 7 working Americans are actually supporting an individual and their family. So I just really wanted to highlight some of those stats. I feel like, again, there was kind of an uproar. There was really a negative response, I think, for a lot, maybe not most, but a lot of people just felt like, man, that's you crossed a line there. And I think what they did was focus on the demographics of what was said, maybe like the weight or the height. And I think that's we're missing the mark, I think, in that I don't think that's what he's saying at all. I think if you're 5'3", I don't think he's taking a shot at you. If you do have weight problems, I don't think that he's taking a shot at you. I think exactly what he's saying is he's frustrated with people taking advantage. And as a working American, he's ticked. And I think a lot of working Americans can say that they don't disagree. I don't know that me and 5 of my buddies or 6 of my buddies should have to support somebody that is not widowed, that's not divorced, that's not currently in a struggle, and then support them for the following 8 years. I think it's missing its mark, and it's programs like that, I think, that are really keeping the working American stuck to where they have to keep showing up, they have to keep working these overtime hours for bullcrap pay, is just because the taxation, you're already getting hit so much on that dollar, and then to turn around and have people pull back out from that to where now you're supporting other abled individuals, people that are capable. We're not talking disability, we're talking people essentially that just don't work, that have dependent children. So again, we won't sidebar into all that. I won't get into my thoughts on the welfare program at all, but would love to know your guys' thoughts. Did you like the song? Did you not? Did you agree with it? Did you not? I would love for you to drop a comment, and of course, smash the like, give us a follow. I'll post all of our social media links in the description as well. So if you like the content, man, give us a shout out. Send it to a buddy. And again, we want to know what you think. We want to know how you feel about it. So thank you guys. God bless.